Inclusive teaching, supporting all students in the college classroom. Are there neutral topics?
Some disciplines grapple with issues of inclusion and diversity more than others by virtue of the content that is included, such as many of the social sciences and humanities, where issues of power and oppression are part of the content that is regularly taught. Instructors who teach content that is typically considered neutral or free from analyses of power, such as chemistry, math, or physics, might consider their courses immune from conversations about diversity. However, it is important to recognize that there are inclusive ways to consider content in the classroom, regardless of what subject matter you're teaching or whether the course content focuses on issues of marginalization or not.
The advice I would offer to faculty who think their content might be neutral is to not think your content is neutral, that content in and of itself doesn't exist in isolation, doesn't exist free of human contamination, doesn't exist on its own, and that if you have real live human beings in your classroom, they are likely to respond in a variety of ways to any form of content, and that we can't anticipate the ways in which students are going to respond to the choices that we make. So if we come into the classroom, into the learning environment, starting from that position, we're in a much better we have a much better chance of creating inclusive learning environments. The examples we choose have a really powerful way of saying who belongs and who doesn't. The stories we tell contribute to that. And the most innocent thing we can think of can have unintended reactions, unintended consequences. And so if we start from a place that content is not neutral, it gives us a much better chance to respond.
So when we're looking at how the knowledge base, how the canon in your field has been created, you need to understand that that represents a certain image of what constitutes legitimate authority. So it's a kind of epistemological authority that each discipline assumes. And I say to them, who has created that? Who are the kind of people who have built your knowledge base up? Who are the gatekeepers? Who are those who control the main academic journals in your field? Who is it who edits handbooks or the encyclopedias? I mean, what positionalities do they represent? So it doesn't matter whether you're teaching critical race theory or whether you're teaching medicine. In each of those areas, there is a body of scholars who has created what are the rules for judging legitimate knowledge. And it's important to analyze just who those people are, who the gatekeepers are.
There's a word I've encountered in philosophy literature that I hadn't heard of before, called scientism, which I find to be really powerful because it implies a sense of neutrality about science. That science is a discipline, or at least most of it is apolitical, that it's neutral. And I think we have many examples in history where that couldn't be further from the truth. I would push them to examples in history where people defended and subscribed to, as a community, to the idea that there was some genetic determination that certain races were more intelligent than others, or that it was okay to experiment on black males to see the outcomes of a particular study, right? These were all members of our community. And these black eyes are often left out of textbooks, thus giving students the impression that there was this, morality-free approach to just, we're here to do science and there's no kind of context to it. So I'm saying all that to say that we may have to re-envision how we discuss and how we communicate science to that kind of next generation. And we ourselves as instructors may have to, again, do a little bit of reading on what that history is like and try to change our pedagogies to suit.
Some instructors say that these considerations on inclusive teaching do not apply to them because the content that they teach is neutral. And this is usually coming from the sciences. So as a scientist, I actually do not believe in neutral content. I believe that all knowledge is contestable. And especially, I am cognizant of the fact that a lot of the societal issues that we're facing today, the bigotry and the racism and the sexism and the homophobia, actually wrap themselves in science to talk about why some groups of people are better than others or are the natural order of things. And so I feel that we have a responsibility to make sure that all our students understand the implications of doing science a certain way. And most instructors that I deal with are not racist themselves or sexist or homophobic or anything. They just have a belief that once students are presented with all the facts, they will come to their own conclusions on their own, and that those conclusions will be good for society. And what we know instead is that that is not necessarily the case. In the sense that there's a lot of areas in our mind that are unexamined. Then once we shine the light, things start to make sense. But if the light is never turned on, then that's not a good opportunity for growth. I'm also aware that there are instances where the non-neutral content finds you. So Lee Warren from Harvard tells the story of a math instructor who was teaching a class, and a student made a throwaway comment that irrational numbers must all be female, and the pandemonium that ensued after that, and how unprepared the instructor felt, because he had always thought that he did not need to prepare himself for this situation because he was just teaching a math class and numbers are numbers and they're not controversial. And so it behooves everybody to prepare ourselves.
I've worked with professors or instructors in science and mathematics. One of the constant things I hear from them is math is math. You know, everything is objective. And how does race, culture, ethnicity influence a course in which we don't deal with the history of racism, with power and privilege? And I tell them that race, culture, ethnicity is a function of everything. It is always present there. But this is a story I oftentimes tell, mathematics and science teachers, and I give them this example. I would say that, yeah, if you and I can sit here and agree that 4 minus 1 is 3. Well, I used to believe that from all of the work that I've done until years ago when I was doing training, a Nigerian counselor teacher came up to me and posed to me this hypothetical problem. He said that there are 4 blackbirds seated in a tree. You take a slingshot and shoot one of them. How many are left? He says that most white students will say, teacher, that's a Mickey Mouse question. The answer is 3. And he said that when you talk to Nigerian students, they'll say, teacher, that's wrong. It isn't 3. The answer is nothing. It's 0. And if it's a white teacher and they ask, well, how did you come up with that answer? They would say that if you take a slingshot and shoot one bird, the others aren't stupid enough to stay around. They'll fly away. None will be around. This is where you begin to, where instructors need to understand the difference between experiential reality and empirical reality, or hypothetical reality. And hypothetical reality that goes on strips all context from a situation or a problem that is going on. The professor who wants to make equal access and opportunities for all students might have asked the question differently. There are 4 blackbirds seated in the tree. You take a slingshot and shoot one of them. How many flew away? This is a blending of both empirical and experiential reality. So I oftentimes say that, you know, when you say that race had nothing to do with it, culture has nothing to do with it, you are in essence saying that it's only my culture that remains here. And as an instructor, you are the primary change agent of that entire classroom. If your head isn't there, no amount of techniques that you are taught will be effective in working and creating this inclusive environment.